Throughout the school year in Brooks County, there have been 9 school threats, and the community and the whole communities are like up in arms, saying, "Okay, what can we do?" Well, just 2 days ago, the school district, along with the community, held a meeting that would solve the problem and a safety plan that would help out, mostly for every school district. Now most of every school districts have a police station. But would Brooks County do the same? And what would kids think? Here's Victoria Bellarimi.
All extracurriculars at high school have been canceled, effective immediately. If I'm the only one that's this upset right now, I don't know what else to say.
Safety and security was the main topic of conversation for Brooks County ISD Superintendent Maria Rodriguez.
We have had to have 5 evacuations in regards to some bomb threats.
A total of 9 bomb threats have been made, launching an investigation to resolve this major disruption. Chief of Police John Garcia says right now they're looking at persons of interest.
Information has started coming in slowly but surely, and it's helping us move in the right direction. That's all we want. We want to find the person who's doing this.
Brooks County Judge Eric Ramos was in attendance. He tells us the bomb threats came from inside the high school.
We just felt like there needed to be more procedures in place to secure the safety of the students.
As the investigation continues, school administrators have decided to pause all extracurricular activities for high school students only. That's created a bigger concern for students and their parents.
But I'm still getting punished for what kids that don't they don't have anything to lose. Some of them don't have stuff to lose, and that's probably the ones that are doing it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm losing possible offers, possible college interest, just for something that I'm not doing.
Officials plan to have another meeting at a later time to review new safety procedures. And once the investigation comes to an end, all extracurricular activities will resume. Reporting in the studio, I'm Victoria Valderrama, Chris 6 News.
So I think it's a good idea canceling those extracurricular activities until the investigation ends. But in the case that wants to say, well, I'm losing offers. It's only until the investigation is complete. You don't have to wet your socks over it. It's only until the investigation is complete. So don't wet your socks. Don't ever wet your socks over this. Let's get to those 2 new bomb threats. Let's go to Kentucky. Several Kentucky high schools have had several threats according to the FBI. Take a look.
Also today, the FBI in Louisville is investigating threats made online toward several Kentucky schools. We don't know all of the schools that did receive the threats, but we do know that the threats were directed at the Bowling Green High School, the Warren Central High School, and Allen County Scottsville High School in Kentucky. We were able to verify through JCPS and the FBI Louisville that none of those threats were directed at local schools, JCPS schools here. The FBI says there is no indication that any of these online threats are credible, but they say they take every threat very seriously. A statement tweeted out by the FBI about all of this reads in part, even if these threats are deemed hoaxes, they could still be prosecuted as federal crimes. Hoax threats are not a joke as they disrupt school, waste limited law enforcement resources, and cause unnecessary distress. Anyone with information that can help police in this, call the Kentucky Safe School Tip Line. It's 866-393-6659.
And the FBI is very serious. You want the FBI getting involved? I don't want that happening. Okay. Now let's go to the second one.
Breaking news right now at 4. An elementary school evacuated after a bomb threat. This happening at Pinewood Elementary School in South Charlotte this afternoon. Officials say out of an abundance of caution, students were evacuated to a nearby shopping center for dismissal. Police now investigating to see if it was a legit threat and find out where it came from.
Whoa. It's just not right. It's not right. Evacuate to a shopping center and then be dismissed? Okay, maybe that's a good plan. I'm going to say what I need to say here. Then we're going to take a break. It seems to me, by watching these two stories, by watching this one, it seems to me that the FBI they're not taking this lightly. They need to be very strict about this. Hoax threats are not taken as a joke. Bullying is not a joke. You want to tease and bully someone? It is no joke. How would you have to spend the rest of your life in a jail cell, doing nothing but staring up at a window, praying you would get out? You made the charge. You made the choice. Now you got to face the consequences. It's like I said, we really need a scared straight program so that way it does not happen again. And if we have to get the FBI involved, then that's exactly what we have to do. But frankly, like we talked about with what was it? It was the High Plains program for juveniles. That was the best solution. We put kids in juvie. Whoever made that threat. But something's got to change. It really does. 6 years ago, there was a bill that would make parents pay for school threats. And just 3 days ago, a threat fine ordinance was shut down by the city council. We'll hear from parents saying it's a good idea and it's a bad idea when we return. Please stay with us. If you lived in Ohio 6 years ago, you may have heard about a bill that would make parents pay for school threats and involving schools suing the parents for wasting their money. So was it a good idea? You're about to hear some parents say it was a good idea, and parents who say it's going too far, and the superintendent who agrees with the same as the other parents. Take a look.
I think you should be held accountable.
I think that's absolutely crazy.
Tri-state parents sharing mixed views on a proposed bill sponsored by Senator Jim Hughes that would allow school districts and law enforcement agencies to sue parents in order to get back what was spent responding to school threats.
I actually think that's a great idea, but I think that's going to go a long way in deterring kids from doing that.
Brian Easterly, the father of a kindergartner, believes parents need to be more accountable.
I think the bill would make them more involved, get the parents more involved with the children, but I don't think they should sue them.
Judy Bennett has a grandson in high school. She doesn't think it's right to sue the parents, especially if they're unaware their child made a threat. Norwood School Superintendent Rob Amodio agrees.
I couldn't see us actually suing the parents.
None on Your Side has covered several school threats just in the past year alone. Amelia, Middletown, Wyoming. Rob says his district focuses on who called in the threat and disciplines accordingly.
You can't watch what they're doing 24 hours a day. And, to hold a parent accountable for the actions of their child, I struggle with that.
In his 8 years as superintendent, he's dealt with a handful of school threats.
At the end of the day, what a child says or does is that falls on the shoulders of the child.
While he's thankful that lawmakers are trying to help, he thinks this goes a little too far.
I don't think it's something that, as of today, that I would see us doing.
Now, we've reached out to other local school districts to get their opinions on this bill, and it'll be interesting to see what happens at the state capitol. We're live in Norwood. I'm TJ Parker, 9 on Your Side.
Now, that was an idea from the Ohio lawmaker. Now, just days ago, back on December 6th, let me pull this up from my laptop here so that way I can read you the description. Just 3 days ago, the East Point City Council shut down an ordinance that would fine families for the cost of school threats. After its second reading, the council members voted on Tuesday on the cost recovery for certain emergency services ordinance. But the public safety director, George, was disappointed by this decision after being a big proponent of the ordinance. Take a look. Because if we got to make laws, if we got to hold parents responsible, we do. If that's a solution, that's a solution. It's already happening in one state. It may happen in yours. Take a look.
Other top story, the city of East Point rejecting a proposal that would have held parents responsible when it comes to false school threats.
Our Jacqueline Francis is live in East Point, and Jacqueline, this was a proposal heavily backed by police in that community.
It was. This is something the police chief was really pulling for, as he said his entire detective staff has been tied up at one point or another because of these false threats. But not all is lost, as he plans to reintroduce the ordinance in the near future.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Curley?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Lucido?
No. In a 2-2 vote, the ordinance that would hold parents financially responsible for kids making false threats failed. It comes after the East Point Police Department has been inundated with investigating these bogus claims, empty threats often made by students trying to get out of school. Introduced last month, the proposed ordinance would have charged parents the police department's cost in such situations. It would also apply to offenses like pulling a fire alarm or drag racing. The council members opposed had their reasons.
This ordinance is just a little too much, and the last thing I want is for anyone to ever have like the fear of getting a bill for calling emergency or non-emergency numbers. I know sometimes, people abuse it and things like that, but our residents do pay taxes for those services, and we should be providing them.
The police chief disappointed by the decision after explaining to council just how much manpower these investigations require.
When someone's making a false bomb threat or attempting to shoot up the school or blow up the school, that deploys our entire detective bureau and all our officers for several hours, even for days. So that's what we want to do, just hold people accountable.
If the mayor had been at tonight's meeting, the police chief believes she would have been the tie-breaking vote allowing the ordinance to pass. For that reason, he plans to put the ordinance before council again in the coming weeks. Reporting live in East Point, Jacqueline Francis, Local 4.
And I want that detective to keep fighting. We have to make parents pay. You guys may be sitting there saying, I don't want to pay for something. I don't want to pay for that. What if I don't want to pay? We'll put you on community service. That's what we'll do. We'll make you do community service hours so that you don't ever do this again. Incidentally, it's not a bad idea. But there ain't no excuse. Because what you really have here is, hey, I'll make a threat and I'll get away with it. That's not the way life works. The way this works is you go to school, you learn, get your high school diploma, and get on with your life. That's what you're here for. But you keep doing things that interrupt the process.
Drinking and drug taking.
Sorry. You keep doing things that interrupt the process. And this is one of those things. So if this new law were to pass in Michigan or any other state, or maybe come to your state one day, I would gladly hope it would pass, because I'm sick and tired of talking about these threats, and I want this to end immediately. I don't want this happening again in South Texas. I don't want this happening again in Oasis County. I don't want this happening in CCISD or in Fire Bluff. I want this to end right now, which is why one of the goals I have in the show is to end the Silence on School Threats, which is a group I created on Facebook to give you guys some tips and information so that I don't have to talk about this. Because I'm fed up. I am fed up for what happened. And if we don't put an end to this, it's going to continue on until somebody wags a finger and says, don't you dare. We don't want this happening again. I don't want to get charged. I don't want to be fined. Ever. What would you do if your child were desperately ill and no drug or medication seemed to work? Up next, you're going to meet a father who says his son had a lot of seizures until a medical miracle happened. Stay with us. Before we continue on, I had planned to give you that Dateline special called Forbidden Love, a murder story. I'll give you that story tomorrow night. I want you now to meet, you're about to meet Jim Abrams, the former Hollywood director with common hit movies. So I have a question for you. What would you do if your child were desperately ill and no drug or medication seemed to work? You're about to meet a father who refused to give up, a man who defied the doctors and was looking for a miracle. Remarkably, he found one, and the question is, why was it kept a secret many years back? Here's John Larson.
Jim Abrams has made some of the most successful film comedies of the past decade.
Right away, back.
His hit movies include Airplane, Naked Gun, and Hot Shots. But the fun stopped for Jim Abrams just over a year ago. He was finishing his latest movie when suddenly his one-year-old son Charlie began having unexplained seizures.
On his first birthday, I was pushing him in a swing out in the front yard, and I noticed his head kind of went like that, and he threw his arm up in the air.
Jim and his wife Nancy took Charlie to a neurologist who did a series of tests on Charlie's brain. The tests confirmed the doctor's suspicion. Little Charlie had epilepsy. But nothing prepared the Abrams for the nightmare to come. Charlie began having many more seizures. Sometimes he'd have 100 seizures a day.
Another seizure.
Sometimes Charlie would just go limp.
Okay, that was a drop seizure.
Other times he'd shake.
Stiff as a board right now.
The worst kind of seizure.
Charlie.
The Abrams brought Charlie to Dr. Donald Shields, a nationally recognized expert at UCLA, who tried to control Charlie's seizures with anticonvulsant drugs.
And then we lost control and just nothing was working. I think he probably had all of the available medications, and we were starting to look at some of the more experimental kinds of medications.
Even worse, Jim Abrams says the drugs had a terrible side effect. They were turning his son into a zombie.
You pour the drugs down the child's throat, your child's throat, despite the fact there's something inside you that says, wait a minute, this can't be right. You know, Charlie was so loaded. At times he just lived in a car seat. He was so blotto from these drugs that he was essentially non-functional.
This little girl is about to have a bad epileptic seizure. Now, while you're watching her, consider this. New miracle drugs control these terrible seizures in most of the 750,000 children in this country who suffer from epilepsy.
Okay, Jess.
But for this little girl and 150,000 kids like her, drugs simply don't work. The Abrams feared Charlie was one of these most unfortunate children.
After the first drug, then there is only a 10 to 15% chance that the second drug will work, regardless of what that drug is. And the percentages drop from there.
Even more frightening, if left unchecked, these seizures can damage their brains, retarding these children forever. So the Abrams were racing against the clock. They had to stop Charlie's seizures before it was too late. They allowed doctors to operate on Charlie's brain, but the seizures continued. They even tried a faith healer, but that didn't work either.
This house was filled with tears. All of us, all the time, cried. I mean, Charlie's brother and sister literally, for months, cried themselves to sleep at the foot of his crib because they just had some sort of instinct that they wanted to be near him.
His son was slipping away. His whole family was in anguish, and the doctors had no answers. Jim Abrams was desperate. He decided to begin his own study of epilepsy. He attended medical lectures and read every book he could find on epilepsy treatment. And one day, in a medical library, he found something no one had told him about. A book describing a diet that supposedly cured half of the epileptic kids who went on it.
And it was like dumbfounding. How could that possibly be?
The book claimed that experts here in Baltimore were perfecting something called the ketogenic diet, a diet consisting largely of something most doctors tell us to avoid: generous helpings of fat. Against his own doctor's advice, Jim brought Charlie to Johns Hopkins Children's Center, where he found the man who wrote the book, Dr. John Freeman. At Johns Hopkins, Jim and Charlie also met a 72-year-old dietitian, Millicent Kelly, who had been working with the diet for 40 years.
So this is the one you use, even though this has a much better flavor.
Now retired and a part-time consultant, Millie had designed meals that give kids just enough protein to grow on, combined with lots of fat, bacon, butter, and heavy whipping cream. Their families have to measure every bite of every meal precisely, or Millie says the diet won't work.
Whatever happens there to cause that seizure just doesn't happen anymore. And they become seizure-free, and that's a remarkable thing.
Yet despite its high success rate, we found several parents who, like the Abrams, say their doctors also tried to talk them out of trying the diet.
We've been actively discouraged by different doctors not to try it. We have talked to many, many neurologists over the years, and they still feel that it's too much trouble.
Too much trouble? Ridiculous, says Nancy Abrams, Charlie's mom.
You know how hard it is to sit here and watch him disconnect from the rest of the family and the world and fade out? I mean, that's a lot harder to sit and watch a kid seize than it is to do this diet.
60 years ago, the diet was much more widely used after first being developed here at Johns Hopkins in the 1920s. But then, in the 40s and 50s, several new wonder drugs came on the market. The drug companies made millions of dollars profits, and doctors stopped using the diet. But all along, Millicent Kelly here at Johns Hopkins and a handful of others kept refining the diet, and there were some real success stories. Be ready! Catch it! Doug Foster is one of them. Today he enjoys a healthy life, including coaching his son's Little League ball team in Virginia Beach, Virginia. But 32 years ago, Doug's prospects looked grim. His constant uncontrollable seizures meant he had to wear a football helmet all day to protect him from sudden falls. But in 1962, Doug's parents put him on the ketogenic diet, and after 2 years, he was fine, seizure-free. And Doug had no negative side effects from eating all that fat.
I suppose if I hadn't found the diet, I would be in an institution. I would be wearing a football helmet, maybe strapped to a wheelchair so I couldn't fall out of the wheelchair and hurt myself. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't be married with 3 beautiful children, with a regular full-time job and a college degree and the whole shooting match.
Daddy.
Finally, it was Charlie's turn to try Millie's diet. He was taken off all medications and fed mostly fats. His father says it was a miracle.
His seizures started to diminish immediately. I mean, it was pretty dramatic. You could hold him and you could kind of feel him be less intense. And within a couple days, he stopped having seizures completely.
Sometimes there is truth in the old ways, even if we don't understand them.
Dr. John Freeman supervises the ketogenic diet at Johns Hopkins.
Do you fully understand how it works? We have no clue how it works. And that's part of the reason it hasn't been accepted in lots of places.
Oh, look what she
But consider the results. Most kids who try the diet at Hopkins can go back to normal food after 2 years, never need drugs again, and remain seizure-free.
I see results like I've been seeing. You know, there's so many encouraging words talking to other parents that have been on the diet, and it works.
I'm coming to get you. I'm coming to get you.
Jim and Charlie returned to Los Angeles, where Charlie thrived.
I'm coming. Here I come. Here I come. I'm coming. I'm coming to get you.
No longer a zombie on medications, his seizures were gone. But the story doesn't end here.
All of a sudden your eyes open up in the middle of the night and you say, wait a minute. You know, this didn't have to happen. 90% of these seizures didn't have to occur. Waking up around the clock and pouring drugs down his throat didn't have to occur.
Jim was angry and puzzled that none of the 6 doctors he went to for help ever mentioned the diet.
What has stopped Charlie's seizures has been in existence for 70 years. It's been sitting there. It was waiting for him.
You had some knowledge that this diet was probably working back at Johns Hopkins, and yet you dissuaded the Abrams from attempting it. How come?
Well, because I don't think we had exhausted all of the medical approaches yet. There were actually still other medications that we hadn't tried yet.
Dr. Freeman tells us that 50 to 70% of the patients that come through his doors and get put on the diet have success. Can you think of any drugs in these hard cases that have 50 to 70% success rates?
Probably not anything that comes up to that level.
So why are modern doctors ignoring this diet? Charlie's own doctor has a surprising answer.
There's no big drug company behind a ketogenic diet, and there probably can never be unless somebody starts marketing sausage and eggs with cream sauce on it as a drug.
You're saying that in a sense, one of the reasons that the ketogenic diet is not popular at this point is because there's not a big drug company behind it selling it to the doctors.
I think that's probably true. I hate to say that, but I think it's probably true.
It does not come in a pill form. It cannot be administered with a scalpel. And the only people who profit from the ketogenic diet are the patients.
And incredibly, the diet could have been lost forever if Millie Kelly had not stuck with it for 4 decades, devoting even her retirement years to keeping a simple miracle cure alive.
Millie hadn't been around all these years, I think the diet would have been lost. Gone. That's how important she is.
Has anyone been invited to a party while they've been on this ketogenic diet?
And that's why Jim Abrams is making a new movie. Not a comedy this time, but a film for parents facing the crisis he faced, recording for future generations Millie's precise recipe for the diet that saved Charlie.
And your meat can be beef, lamb, veal, pork, liver, fish.
And since nobody else was doing it, Abrams personally took on the task of organizing a major medical conference on the diet last month. Doctors came from all over the country, even Dr. Donald Shields of UCLA, who last year had tried to talk Jim out of pursuing the diet, but now he's reconsidered.
If this is going to help a kid to have a chance for a more normal life, then I want to be able to use it.
2.5-year-old Charlie is doing well, but he's still not walking by himself like other kids his age.
But you're so cute.
But Jim Abrams still wonders if the months of pummeling from the seizures and the drugs did any permanent damage to Charlie's brain. And that thought keeps him angry.
How it could possibly be that that diet and its success rate at Johns Hopkins has remained a secret is absolutely incredible to me. And what really makes it tragic is the amount of kids who have suffered because of that.
Wow. But the story does not end there. Coming up next, part 2 of this outrageous ketogenic diet story. You're gonna see an update of what's been happening since the original broadcast had happened. But I should point out, since that story first aired, Charlie's walking across the room by himself and talking in complete sentences. In the meantime, his father set up a foundation to help spread the word about the ketogenic diet, which is part of the Charlie Foundation YouTube channel. Now, if you want to learn more about the ketogenic diet, I'll have some videos, links on the Give Me Break newsletter at givemebreak.substack.com. Coming up next, the eggs and bacon diet has ended and Charlie's seizures are gone. But is the story over? Stay with us. Bacon, butter, heavy whipping cream, the eggs and bacon diet. If you're just joining us, we're focusing in on Charlie Abrams, Jim Abrams, and Nancy Abrams, who found the ketogenic diet. Now, it's a diet. Now, this diet does not come in a pill form. It doesn't get measured with a scalpel. No, it doesn't. It's a diet that would help all the seizures in the brain, stop all the seizures. Now the plan was, if the seizures were gone, the children would be off the diet. But what about the Abrams family? Did Charlie's seizures were Charlie's seizures gone after that story aired back in 1994? Or did they come back? Once again, here's John Larson.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Charlie.
It had been 2 years of the so-called eggs and bacon diet, and Charlie Abrams was feeling great. His parents, Jim and Nancy, couldn't have been more pleased.
Our experience with the diet was he was seizure-free and drug-free, and his EEG, which had been a mess, cleared up, and he was healthy.
Under the plan, most children go off the diet after 2 years to see if they have outgrown the disease. So in 1996, when he was 4 years old, it was Charlie's turn.
The lore of the diet back then was that if a kid has done as well on the diet as Charlie, that you can wean him off the diet, then he'll be fine. Right. But that wasn't our experience. We took Charlie off the diet, and his seizures came back as heavily, as profoundly, as destructively.
As many and as violently?
Yeah, as violently as initially.
In that same year, one seizure was so bad, Jim and Nancy rushed Charlie to the emergency room, fearing it would cause brain damage. After all they'd been through, the Abrams were back to square one.
So we called Dr. Freeman at Hopkins and said, that was a refresher course we weren't interested in taking.
Dr. Freeman had 3 suggestions. Do nothing, put Charlie on drugs, or put him back on the diet. Going back on the strenuous diet meant endless hours of meal preparation for the Abrams. Every bite had to be measured down to the gram. The right balance of high fat, high protein had to be exact. But for Jim and Nancy, the decision was easy.
So we instantly put him back on the diet, and a day later his seizures were gone.
Once again,
as dramatically, his seizures were gone. He was just fine.
The Abrams would try to take Charlie completely off the diet again 2 years later. But before we tell you more about what happened, you should know that as much as the diet was changing Charlie's life, it was transforming Jim's as well.
A father's desperate struggle to save his son from a
Jim says the original broadcast of Charlie's story was like the breaking of a dam. Tens of thousands of emails and letters from families with epileptic children flooded Jim's office.
And one of the letters that we got from somebody who was on the diet and saw Dateline that night was a true story about another family who had found the diet and had to go through extraordinary circumstances in order to get their kid on the diet.
Jim contacted the family. The mother shared their story. And what happened next could only happen in Hollywood.
And I actually got to call her up one day and say, Meryl Streep is playing you. And we made a movie about the ketogenic diet.
What have we got here?
In 1997, Jim told their story in a made-for-television movie, First Do No Harm. Once again, the diet was on the national stage, reaching families whose doctors had failed to tell them about it.
When he was on the drugs, he was a zombie.
Families like Jim and Jennifer Southerns of Palmdale, California. All 4 of their children suffer from epileptic seizures. After seeing Jim's movie, they first put their eldest son on the diet.
We went from 30 a day to none, almost.
The seizures were shrinking. It was less, it was unbelievable. We were like, oh my God. We were really happy, but we were also saying, we could have did this a long time ago. We could have not went through that years of drugging him.
They put their other 3 children on the diet as well. And again, it worked. All 3 seizure-free.
I was really mad when we found out about the diet, because we were like, wait a minute, we didn't even get that option. No one even came and said, okay, you can take this medication, but there's also this diet. So we could sit down and make the decision.
But that is changing, as increasing numbers of doctors no longer consider the diet alternative therapy, but an accepted form of treatment. Even Charlie's first physician, Dr. Shields, is a convert. One recent study supports what the creators of the diet had known, that the diet is 50 to 70% effective in reducing seizures in pediatric epilepsy where drugs no longer work. Which may be why Jim Abrams, the Hollywood movie director, has written a new script. Not for some movie, but for his own life. He no longer directs Hollywood blockbuster comedies. He has chosen instead to dedicate himself to spreading the word of a diet.
How is the new life different from the old life?
I don't want to ever minimize how much fun it is to sit in an audience and hear the laughter when you've made a comedy movie and, you know, you remember the day we thought of the joke.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Can you remember refining it and filming it, and now you can sit anonymously in the audience and hear the laughter, and that's wonderful. But to pick up the telephone and be able to talk with someone who says, I got my kid back, and you were helpful in that, you know, there's nothing quite like it.
It occurs to me you're still in the business of making people smile.
Yeah. Hopefully, yeah, that's true. You know, that's a much broader smile. You know, that's certainly a longer-lasting smile than "Please don't call me Shirley."
Thank you for allowing me to appear before you today.
Jim now lobbies Washington for epilepsy research.
It's really all about the dietitian.
And runs seminars nationwide for families and doctors.
Seizures.
Diet pioneer Dr. Freeman has joined Jim on the lecture circuit.
Jim was the engine that drove this and that enabled us to do the work to bring the ketogenic diet to a conference like today.
But back in 1998, when Charlie was 6 years old, the Abrams were still trying to wean their son off the diet. And again, Charlie's disastrous seizures returned. So the family tried one last time when Charlie turned 7. And this time, it worked. Charlie has been seizure-free ever since, and he now can eat virtually anything he wants to, just like other kids. Charlie is now an active 10-year-old in 4th grade. And on this day, performing at his 2nd piano recital. The song, A Gift to Be Simple.
So what was that like, to listen to that and to think about what he's been through and how this has played out?
Yeah. It was a long time ago, but it's still...
You haven't changed that much in 8 years.
Charlie has an older brother and an older sister who have had no medical problems. And, you know, we took very much for granted each stage of their development. With Charlie, each new step of development is a new miracle. And to watch him play the piano and smile and perform the way he does, to us, that's another miracle.
I'm probably tearing up a little bit. So coming up next, the foods that are acceptable to the ketogenic diet. I'm tearing up. Stay with us. We're talking about the ketogenic diet. Doesn't come in a pill form, doesn't go in a scalpel. It's a diet consisting mostly of fatty foods like bacon, butter, heavy whipping cream. So something that we're asking, what foods are acceptable to the keto diet? Well, here, like animal proteins, like seafood, like salmon. Salmon, sardines, mackerel, fatty fish are high in omega-3 fats, which your body needs. Meat and poultry, like steak, for instance, fat steak. Steak is really great. Eggs, to trigger hormones and increase feelings of fullness. It's good. Although egg yolks are high cholesterol, they don't appear to increase your risk of heart disease. You got dairy alternatives like butter, milk, cream, cheese. Just 1 ounce provides 1 gram of carbs, 6 grams of protein, and a good amount of calcium, which it's good for your arms, it's good for your muscles. In addition, eating cheese regularly may help reduce the loss of muscle mass and strength that occurs with aging. That's lower carbs of a keto diet, like blue cheese, brie, cheddar, feta, goat cheese, pepper jack, parmesan, etc. Plain yogurt and cottage cheese. Both yogurt and cottage cheese are shown to help decrease appetite and promote feelings of fullness. Cream and half and half. Unsweetened plant-based milk. Vegetables. Salad greens, green greens, herbs like thyme, sage, mint, oregano, dill, parsley, cilantro, basil, rosemary, and lemongrass. Green leafy vegetables, peppers, summer squash, high-fat veggies. Other non-starchy vegetables like spaghetti squash, broccoli, cabbage, mushrooms, eggplant, radishes, turnips, celery, okra, tomatoes, eggplant, green beans, cucumber, mushrooms, etc. To avoid this, avoid corn, beets, potatoes, onions, whatever squash like butternut squash, acorn squash, etc. Other plant-based foods like nuts and seeds, berries, shirataki noodles. You don't avoid those. I mean, nuts and seeds, berries, shirataki noodles, dark chocolate and cocoa powder, fats and oils, olive oil. It's impressive benefits for your heart. It's really good for you. Butter and ghee. Ghee is clarified butter. Beverages like coffee, tea, and finally, unsweetened sparkled water. These beverages are refreshingly flavored by generally free of sugar or sweeteners. For that reason, no calories or carbs. So even if you would like the full list of this, I'll have it on the Give Me a Break newsletter at givemeabreak.substack.com. If this diet works for all kids, it would be seizure-free from the brain. So really, next time your doctor's saying, we'll try this drug, go with the next. Sorry, I heard about a diet. Screw you. Well, don't really flip off your doctor. Just reject your doctor's advice. Go on the diet. Talk to Charlie. Talk to Charlie Abrams, or you can talk to Jim Abrams. He'll tell you all about the diet, along with John Freeman, and they'll tell you what foods you can put on, so that way your child can be seizure-free and will not be able to have one seizure a day, or at least 1,000 seizures throughout the years your child will be living on this earth. Coming up on Saturday, she was young and beautiful, but it all ended into a murder. But did the family do it? They deny it. But that's what the police say. Will this crime ever be solved? Forbidden Love. Coming soon. A story, an investigation into hemophilia. About blood clots. A 6-month Dateline investigation would cover this. Lee Thompson was silent no more. That's Give Me a Break for this Friday. We'll see you again for Give Me a Break Saturday night. For all of us here at Give Me a Break and YouTube, I hope you've had a great day. Your body, your choice. Good night, everyone.